All right, so this is a really interesting compressor, and it really does exist. The hardware does exist. If you want to buy this in hardware, it's $10,000. Made in Germany. It's all discrete. There are no tubes. It's solid state, and it really gives you lots and lots of options when it comes to analog compression. And of course, it's available also as a plugin, both native through Plugin Alliance, I believe, or UAD also has a version. And it's very analog sounding. You know, we love our digital compressors, our Pro C2s, our Pro MBs for clean, clear digital compression. But for analog style compression, they always have a sound and a color, and that sound and that color is good and it's musical, and it was developed over many years of people tweaking capacitors and resistors and finding something really magical and good. And so it has a sound. In other words, it's not pure and transparent. If you want something extremely transparent, FabFilter, but it looks like everyone here has FabFilter. So this is what we call a musical compressor. And the cool thing about it is that it has mid-side technology built into it. And for those of you, I mean, most of you are probably aware of mid-side technology. It allows you to take the center channel, the mid channel, which has the kick, the bass, the lead vocal, and the snare, and process it separately from what's on the sides. And what's on the sides is usually, stereo effects, things that are panned wide, hi-hats, and that sort of thing. So one of the biggest tactics when you're doing bus processing or mastering is to compress for power, right? Compression creates power. And we want the power in the center, right? The bass, the sub bass, the kick, even the snare, that we want to compress the center, but leave the sides uncompressed so that the stereo effects can have their own sort of attack and decay, and they can decay the way they want. So what this allows us to do is to go into mid-side mode and sort of compress them differently. So from left to right, up on the top row, we have a threshold, so we know that from compression. We have an attack, and then we also have a very fast attack, a feed forward, an auto fast button as well with the attack. So this auto fast button can control very quick transients, and has a cool sound to it. You can go feed forward or feed back. Those are two different styles of topologies where the compressor is either listening to the front of the sidechain circuitry or the back, and they have a different sound to them. And then we also have release and auto fast release as well. If you look, the ratios are interesting on this one. They don't go up very high because it's really for mastering. Most of the time when we're doing mastering compression, we're not doing 10-to-1 ratios or 8-to-1 ratios. Rarely, usually, do we go above 2.5-to-1. So if you see, there's lots of resolution between 1.1 and 2.1, or 2.1.9, and that means that within those smaller ratios, there's lots of sound difference that you can achieve. Now, there's also an EQ built into this compressor, and it's this interesting EQ they call a niveau curve. It's sort of like two shelves that work opposite. It's in Pro Q2, I think it's called a tilt shelf. So if you're sort of shelf boosting the high frequencies, then you're shelf cutting the low frequencies and vice versa. And you kind of figure, like, why would they put an EQ in a compressor? But it's kind of handy, it's almost like a channel strip kind of workflow. If you're working on a console that your EQ and compression is right next to each other, you can make some quick little tonal shifts that's cool. And then we also have sidechain filtering. And sidechain filtering is so important for compressing whole mixes or drum buses, because we want to take the low frequencies out of the sidechain so that the kick and the bass power is not triggering the compression. It's almost like if you don't have that, it's really hard to get a good result. So this is not cutting low frequency out of the output of the sound, but it's cutting the low frequencies from where the compressor's listening to. And this allows us to have some very sort of mid-range induced compression and lets the low frequencies be free and happy. There's a direct button down below where you can listen to the direct signal or take it out, turn on or off the compressed signal, and a wet dry mix so that you can sort of mellow out your compression or do something extreme. And again, we don't have very extreme ratios here, but to do some more aggressive compression and then blend it sort of parallel compression style. There's an output gain, and there's also a warm button, and the warm button turns on and off output transformers. And for those who know about saturation, transformers really are a form of saturation. They create saturation. They help to organize the energy in the signal, but transformers compress a little bit, and usually they add a little bit of the first even harmonic. So if you had a fundamental at 100, you get a little 200. And tape machines are odd ordered harmonics generally, 300, 500, if you have a fundamental at 100. So this adds sort of the octave up on the fundamental, which is a big fattener and a thickener. So that's the warm button. And then finally, a little bit of soft clipping, right? So in the world of digital, there's really spiky transients, and they don't add anything to the character of the sound, but they do cause distortion. They make it so you can't turn things up because you'll be writing a square wave. So a little bit of soft clipping, Decapitator is a soft clipper, is actually very helpful in just chopping some of those spiky peaks. And sometimes digital signals have a little what we call digital glare. And it's just everything is too spiky and too peaky. So this can kind of smooth the tops off. And so that's a little bit of an overview of the plugin. Let's give it a listen here in action. And we're just going back and forth bypassing with the compressor doing nothing. And whenever I listen to a new analog modeled compressor, I always just listen to it doing nothing so I can just hear the coloration and the flavor of the circuitry first. Because again, these musical compressors saturate and compress, and we love them for that. So this is just listening to the sound of it. And it has a subtle sound. It's clean, but it has a little bit of a personality. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unlink the channels. When we unlink the channels and we're in mid-side mode, which is down there in the center, the left is the mid signal, the right is the side signal. So in the mid signal is the kick, the sub bass, the snare, the lead vocal or lead melody. And then on the sides is all the really cool stereo effects, stereo reverb, things that are different in the signal. So now the left side, when we unlink them and go into mid-side mode, the left side is the mid mode, the right side is the side mode. Okay, so this is like one of my favorite things about mid-side technology is the first time someone gave me a stereo track and they said, listen, I'm going to subtract the mid signal so you can only hear the sides. I thought it was magic. Like, it blew my mind. It freaked me out, like in a good way. So now what we do is when we turn off this direct signal on the left mid channel, we get to hear the sides, right? We get to hear the stereo mix, but subtracted everything that's common to both the left and the right. The first time someone showed this to me, it absolutely blew my mind, and it still makes me feel like a kid, again, that you can actually do this. Isn't that like just so much fun? It's ridiculous that you can actually do that and process the mid and the side and then put them back together like it never happened. It's amazing. It's crazy. Okay, so I could do that all day. So now, since we're on the mid signal, we're gonna take that sidechain filter and push it all the way to high pass filter, right? So the highs pass, the lows are cut, and now on the next knob over, we're gonna set what the cutoff frequency is, and what we're saying is don't listen, don't let any of these lower frequencies at all influence or trigger the compression. Very important. This is the only way you're going to really retain the low frequency power when you start to apply compression to the mid signal. So where do you set this? Some people say 300. I say 300-ish. So somewhere around there, can even sometimes 500 is good, right? The new SSL UAD SSL is goes up to 500. So you usually see anywhere like 100, 200, 300, but it's going to depend on the track and it's going to depend on, your taste, of course. Now, when we set up to compress the mid signal, typical attack and release settings are a slow attack and a fast release, right? Because we don't want the compressor to be too grabby, right? Too grabby. So we want to let the transient, especially because we're on the mid, we want to let that kick express itself before the compression, kicks in. So if the attack is too fast, it will make sort of a grabby effect. So you want to start with a slow attack and a fast release. We also want it to let go so that it keeps the groove. If you want more of a glue effect, you're going to go for a longer release time. And that's totally valid, and you can set that by ear. But for a starting place, it's good slow attack, fast release, and a 1.5-ish ratio is a good starting place. So now, having set up the compressor, now we're going to drive the threshold a little bit. We're going to make it more and more sensitive until we start to see on the left side a little bit of gain reduction, right? That big circle in the center with the logo, that shows us the gain reduction and also the soft clipping. So we just turned the threshold, made it more and more sensitive until a little bit of gain reduction started to show up. And just like any typical compressor, as you go for a longer release time, you get more gain reduction. Why? Because the compressor is holding the signal down longer. So you saw that as we lengthened the release time there, that we got more gain reduction. So now we're going to the gain knob, and digital compressors have what they call auto makeup gain. And we love auto makeup gain. Auto makeup gain is dope because what it means is that as you're starting to apply more compression, more threshold, more compression, that the compressor guesses of how much gain reduction you're doing and adds it to the output, which is cool because we compress, as I said, again, for power. So it's nice that you can feel the power as you're doing the compression. That's very, very cool. Now, in the analog world, except for API, figured out how to do analog auto makeup gain. On the API Vision console, they somehow in the analog world figured out how to do auto makeup gain. I don't know how they did that, but most of the time in the analog world, we don't have makeup gain. So we have to manually apply the makeup gain. So when we go in and out of bypass, we can hear the power we're creating. So now you don't have to match the makeup gain exactly to the gain reduction. But the idea is to get it sort of close. Okay, so now we're just compressing or creating pressure in the mid signal. The sides are light and fluffy and airy. Now look, everyone, look at the dramatic difference of the way the compressor behaves when you turn on or off the internal sidechain filter. Right? Again, we're saying everything, I don't know, where am I? Around 300. I'm saying everything under 300 from the mid signal is cut out of the sidechain signal so it's not triggering the compression. Look what happens, how much your compressor eats your low end and eats your power if you don't filter your internal sidechain on the mid signal. Let's look at that again. It's actually pretty dramatic. So that's very dramatic. Can you see can everyone hear how much power is getting eaten up if you don't filter your sidechain? It almost makes it impossible to use a analog style compressor on a drum bus or a whole mix and mastering. Yeah, it kills your power, exactly. So that's a big deal, right? And here also we're seeing the design of this compressor, that there's so much resolution on that knob within between 1.1 and 2.1 or 1.9. There's a whole world of sound in that very small window of ratio. I don't think you're going to see that on any other compressor. The good analog compressors you'll see, and even Pro C2 does it, where it gives you much more resolution in that light compression range to dial it in. Because the difference between 1.5 and 2.1 is a lot bigger than the difference between a ratio of 11 and a ratio of 12, for example. So it's a cool design, very mastering-y, or bus processing. So now what we saw was I bypassed in and out the compressor, and it was louder with the compression off. So that means that my manual makeup gain needs to be adjusted, because we want to feel the power. You don't want to bypass your compressor and it's louder when it's bypassed. That's kind of like messes with your head. Like, am I creating power here or am I goofing around? So when you have that experience, just obviously add some more manual makeup gain until it's a fun bypass. And now we're just really trying to shape the power in that mid signal. And we're listening to what? The kick and the bass, really. We're really focusing our mind on the kick and the bass and just trying to not choke it, but sort of gather up the power and just squeeze on it a little bit. And it's just giving a little bit of a hug to that center signal. Now we have to be delicate because we have this whole mix, so we can't be too heavy-handed. But it should sound a little mushy with the compressor out now and a little bit hardened up with the compressor in. Can everyone feel that it's subtle, but can people start to feel a little bit of that power coming down the center? Good, 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 good. So now let's go after the sides a little bit. We kind of put the center, the mid signal in a good place. And typically on the sides, you don't want to compress them too much. You can do a little bit, but you would do more compression to the mid signal and leave the sides either lightly compressed or uncompressed. And of course here you can EQ it. And then when we use the gain, it becomes sort of a mid-side widener, which is a cool place to do the widening. Now, I know I'm sort of exaggerating a little bit, but I like wide. Wide is fun. Wide is fun in headphones for sure, right? And so this is a wonderful place to create some just overall stereo mid-side width, is just going to the gain knob on the sides and pushing it. And again, from the gain reduction meter here, you can see that we're not doing any compression on the sides. Wide is good. Okay, so that's the uncompressed version. We can try a little bit of the lightly compressed sides as well. So again, we're going to go lightly compressed. So slow attack, fast release, and we'll give it a little bit of threshold. And again, that wonderful light ratio. So that you can see that little bit of gain reduction flickering on the sides. Just a very light bit of compacting of the side signal. And you start to really hear that, again, this is not Pro C2. This is an analog modeled compressor, and it has an analog personality, and it's a warm, I would describe the sound as being very warm, and, you know, kind of not overly open on top, which has its own style of warmth to it. So now we can also go to the EQ, this Niveau EQ, and try a little bit of this tilt shelf swivel, just EQing the sides a little bit with our light compression. So again, just to remind you, what this EQ is doing is simultaneously boosting the highs very low with a high shelf. So just lifting up the high frequencies, but then also simultaneously cutting the lows with the shelf to take any muck out of the sides. So we're cleaning and lifting the sides. So there's a little EQ to the mid signal. And again, that funny kind of curve that we're cutting a little bit of that super subby stuff, that 30 hertz, that 35, that can really isn't necessarily always musical, and sometimes just congest the speakers. And it's funny, sometimes when you do a low cut at 30, 12 dB per octave or something, you get more forward low end. It's scary because you're like, oh, I don't want to cut the sub. I want a big sub. But what happens is, because the speakers, the headphones, whatever, don't think that they have to reproduce these very, very low frequencies, it actually makes the speaker decongested and groove harder. And you get that sort of counterintuitive thing that you're cutting subs and you're getting more subs back, the ones that you want. So you can do that inside this compressor. And yes, smooth is the word, Sean. I agree. That's a good one. Smooth. Okay, and finally, we have this warm button. And the warm button, as we said, is an output transformer that you can turn on or off. And from our science at Mixmaster Wyatt Academy, our private testing centers, meetings that we have, typically the transformer on is going to give you the first even harmonic. And things that give you a first even harmonic are fat. So transformerless is usually a little bit clearer. And when you have a transformer, it usually means it's a little bit fatter. So you can turn that sound on or off here. They call it warm because it is warm. And it just puts a little bit of weight on the kick. And when you watch the video later, you can just rewind over and over. But it puts some wonderful weight and good harmonics on the low frequencies. So there you go. A super cool compressor with lots and lots of musical options, lots of ways to run it. You can put the transformer on the mid signal, have the sides transformerless. And this is great for mastering because you have the mid-side capability, but this works great on parallel buses too. Parallel drum bus, instrument buses, all kinds of things. Where you want to take a copy of all the drums or instruments or vocals or anything and do some parallel compression and then blend it back in. You have just about every musical option you would want in this box, and very, very versatile. So it plays a nice part in our curriculum at Mixmaster Wyatt Academy. we are the #1 school for mixing and mastering in the world. We're having our 2nd birthday in October. So we're quite proud of that. We have an incredible student body. So many people in the school are here today. Great to see everybody. And thank you, Mike Hooks, for putting everything together today. So let me just say a couple things, and then I'll answer some questions, as many as I can. I told you we'd make it a little more compact today because it's a big holiday weekend here. But I want to thank everybody for coming, especially the new people, and then also especially the OG crowd too. Everyone for coming. It's wonderful to see all the familiar faces and also all the new people. So, we have all kinds of courses for the summer, all kinds of wonderful video courses, and you can take a video course, self-study, mixing foundations, next level mixing, mastering, composition, sound design, and watch the videos while you're in your hammock relaxing, and then also come to class once a week to a live question and answer, get live feedback from your track work in progress, and also ask any live questions. So it's pretty amazing. Thank you guys. And we just have just an incredible community of really smart, hardworking producers who are figuring out everything, figuring out all the technology, all the workflows, and their music just gets better and better within a couple months, not years, but months. So it's a wonderful community to join. And I know it's summer, but don't take summer off. Keep your mixing and mastering muscles in shape. And we have really all kinds of wonderful courses for you. So if you need anything from us, join us on the live chat, and we will get back to you immediately. We're pretty quick about getting back to everybody. We have payment plans now. Payment plans for video courses, which we just introduced, to make it easier and easier and easier for you to take us on your vacation this summer. So don't take the summer off. I'm not taking the summer off. And of course, I will take a couple walks in the garden, but it's pretty fun to even be wherever you are in the world, or on a plane, or in an airport waiting, learning mixing and mastering. Everyone else looks upset and angry, and you look happy and engaged. So the videos are really wonderful for that. So anyway, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Mike, for putting this together. It's a great compressor. We use it all the time. It's just very musical and very intelligently put together. If there are any questions, let me see if I can answer them now about anything. And if anyone needs to leave early, again, thank you for coming. If you want to stay for questions, let me know. And we have also a great forum, mixmasterforum.com, and you can keep the conversation going there as well. So the question is the time shift in the continents. We have lots and lots of Europeans, and the live question and answer is Wednesdays from 4 to 5 p.m. New York time, which in Europe is about 10 p.m. And it used to work really well. Yeah, this school is completely international. We have people from literally everywhere in the world, and it seems to work extremely well. All right, everybody. I just want to say thanks again. If anyone has further questions, please check us on the forum, mixmasterforum.com. Any questions about live courses, please go to our website and hit us on the live chat. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day and evening, and please let us know what we can do for you. Cheers, everyone. Thank you. Happy 4th for those who are celebrating. Cheers.